So thank you so much for allowing me to hopefully entertain you for the next 20, 25, or until I get my stop sign card. Arlene's got that covered. So again, my name is Ludwig. When I met you in January, I was the Director of Quality Improvement at Stanford Youth Solutions. I'm very excited to announce that now that I meet you, I'm Ludwig, Chief Quality Improvement Officer at Stanford Youth Solutions. Stanford Youth Solutions really has my heart in so many ways. It's an organization that I've had the pleasure of working with for the last 6 years. And I come to you just a little bit differently than so many of you as my colleagues, in that I've spent most of my time in quality improvement. And so that means really working with the organization as a whole, looking at all of our organizational programs, which include mental health and foster care at the end, because I'm spending most of my time talking about foster care today. So I'll put them at the end right now just to talk about them for the next 30 minutes. In the work that I've been able to do at the organization, it really has been founded on the principle that permanency is a way of life. It's not for the privileged few. It's for all of our youth. It's a part of what we do with our families and how we ensure that youth are getting the best care and the best services that they possibly can. And I'm so pleasured and so privileged to be able to work at Stanford Youth Solutions and to see the great work that we do as an organization. So PICO, it's so funny because I know that 8 months ago we were not using that term as regular language. It has become so just a part of our regular dialogue right now. And so I will talk to you about PICO. We will have fun with PICO. And I do remember Sharon Lynn driving through the bank and she's like, hold on for a second. I'm like, what you doing, pulling money out right now? We're talking about PICO. All right, so let's move on a little bit and talk about this action research project that so many of us, there's 15 of you and one of me, so 16 of us have the privilege of doing for almost the last year. So pipeline to permanency and retaining foster parents. I will say that I will be using the term foster parents and resource parents interchangeably. And that's because in California, we have adopted the term resource parents. I can't tell you how planned this was and that I'm going after Alfonso because he really set up California very well in terms of what we do and how we operate. I'll talk a little bit more about continuum care reform, which was in 2017, as Alfonso shared, and really how that's impacted the work that we've done at Stanford Youth Solutions. Overview of presentation, we're going to go through this. We're going to move through it pretty quickly because there are 14 more amazing presentations at hand today throughout the next 3 days. And so pipeline to permanency action research project, which I really get to share with you, and I'm really excited to share that with you. And then piloting a screening tool that we came up with to work with our resource families and to work with our teams. And then my journey with MPLD. I cannot believe that we're already here at the end. And I will tell you, I never thought we'd get here either. And then some questions. I'd be happy to entertain some questions. All right, so this was an important picture. I added this in, pipeline to permanency. So much of the work that we do, again, at Stanford Youth Solutions is about permanency. We really have a desire to ensure that every youth is placed in a permanent home, placed with a permanent family. I believe that that's an obtainable wish and an attainable desire that we have, and I love that we have the opportunity to work towards that. And I really feel that everyone in this room sees that as a true vision as well. This is a picture that's actually on our website. These are youth who are in our program, and we decided these are our youth who are placed in foster care. And with foster care, a lot of our youth aren't able to have their pictures or their images actually used, their facial images used. And so we thought we'd get creative and find a way to still put them on our website and to still have their impact, but by looking at just the feet and their desire to be a part of the organization in any way that they could. So pipeline to permanency. I will tell you that my action research project really was about identifying a need that exists, I think, beyond our organization, but looking at what truly does exist within our organization. As a quality improvement, as I worked in quality improvement, working with multiple organizational aspects in terms of many programs, one of the things I realized in a lot of the time that I spent at the organization is that we still truly struggle with recruitment and retention of our foster families. I don't think that's unique to Stanford Youth Solutions. but it is something that I think we have the ability to have impact and to do something about. And so it was an opportunity to actually look at this in this action research project and decide how we can make change, how we can make sustainable change. There were 4 identified concerns, and as you can see, one is really our struggle with recruitment of foster families, of foster parents. How do we get foster parents into our organization? And then once we get them, how do we keep them? That's probably the biggest struggle that I think most organizations really struggle with in terms of getting them. It seems like we can get our foster parents. We're out there, we're motivating, we're getting them in, and then what we found is that once they're with us, a year later, they decided to not be with us anymore, or they didn't get exactly the youth that they were looking for, and so I'd rather be on hold. Well, that's not, as much as we love getting them in, what we realized is that we didn't have enough viable foster parents to continue to operate under our program. And I do want to say that our program is not a huge program. We typically serve about 65 youth at a time, so it's not huge. On average, we looked at data, and what we saw was that out of the multiple referrals that we got, and the ability to place up to 8 children a day, we really couldn't do that. And again, it's because we didn't have the homes in order to do that placement of youth. We realized that in Sacramento County, which is in California, with over 2,000 foster with over 2,000 foster youth, we would need an estimated 1,300 homes, and the numbers are different because we look at foster youth in sibling sets, and so we would typically want to place sibling sets together. And then we found, just as Alfonso shared and referenced, that we really had some we had a lot of restrictions on placement of youth. And that was either because our foster families weren't interested in a particular age, a particular demographic, or that they found that they wanted to do something just a little bit different than what we were offering in terms of youth who are coming through care. Again, in looking at the fostering awareness of youth who need placement and permanency, what we realize a little bit more globally is that there really is a shortage of foster parents who are able and willing to provide a home for youth who are in care. We realize again that this is bigger than Stanford Youth Solutions, and that multiple agencies really struggle with finding enough foster care families and then also having a long-term or permanent placement for them as well. We realized that if agencies had more information, it's possible that we could really improve how we do this whole recruitment and retention and ensuring that placement for permanency of youth was achievable. And we also wanted to look at a focus on intentional recruitment and retention. And so again, the action research project that I did really focuses on that intentionality and how we could place youth with the right families at the right time, hoping for permanency. We didn't want to do what we had done before in terms of like placing youth and hoping for the best. If we could be just a bit more intentional, our hope was that we would have more successful and achievable outcomes. I wanted to bring in a little bit about Stanford Youth Solutions, and when I talked about the fact that we typically have about 65 youth in placement at a time. Something that was really important and something that Sherilyn has truly, I think, inspired all of us is to look at the demographics. Look at who we're serving, how we're serving them, and how we ensure that all needs, as much as we can, have those needs get met. And so I was really excited to see that our foster youth, at the time we had 63 when we did this, when we ran the data. Our foster youth and our foster parents, we had 79. Now I want to say there are 79 viable, like that means that they are certified, approved. I hear Yuri in my head, and Yuri is my mentor. I'll go to that in a second. But we had about 79 approved foster families, individuals, and we had 63 youth in care. And what we can see when we look at the demographics, we did racial demographics, and what we saw was that our numbers were really strong in terms of the families and the youth who are in care. So for example, 29 African American individuals and 15 African American youth. And then if you go around the circle, you'll see that we're really kind of close in terms of meeting and ensuring that we have youth in their demographics who look like the families who are actually coming to us to provide foster care as well. That was really exciting, and we hadn't done that before. We've been having great success at having families who wanted to be a part of our organization, but we hadn't stopped to really focus on who was a part of our organization, who wanted to be foster parents in our organization. So this was really important for us and something that we definitely will continue to do. I will tell you, there's no better tool than intentionality. When you know information, you make better decisions. Again, looking at all the wonderful things we've done in this very, very short year, seems like we've done so much. One of the things that stood out to me was how important policy was. When we look at policy, policy really dictates how services are provided. And no matter if we like the policy or not, we have to be aware of it. And so, again, I'll keep referencing Alfonso. He's a superstar for me right now. So I'll tell you that in California in 2017, we had the Continuum of Care Reform. And really what that act was is it really talked about how do we better serve youth who need placement, and more importantly, how do we look at it from a perspective of permanency. We're not just placing youth to place them. We're looking for permanency and how do we achieve that goal. And so the tenets of CCR, there were 3 primary tenets of CCR, and one was that the government basically said, the state legislature basically said, we want to reinvent this whole idea about recruitment and retention. We need to have more, again, intentionality on who we're looking for parents, and we want to make sure that they're not in it for just a very short-term perspective. We want to make sure that they really understand what we're asking for them, and we want to see them stick around for the long run. Another thing that we talked about in the tenets for CCR is providing youth with permanency. When we're thinking about reunification, how do we do that in a way that really makes sense, makes it achievable, makes it successful, and ensures that hopefully youth are not continuing to travel through home after home after home. And then one of the really interesting principles that they looked at was providing trauma-informed and culturally relevant services to our youth. And so as we look in our organization internally at foster care, we're not looking at just having a place that we can put youth for this moment and hope they can be there tomorrow. No, we're looking at all of these different tenets and aspects to ensure that we're doing the very best that we can do by youth who are entering in our program, and also by the families who are saying we want to have youth in our homes. So one of the things that was really important to look at, again, I can hear Sharon Lynn in my head who's saying, does this exist already? Are you looking at something and it's already done? And I'm like, God dang it, Sharon Lynn, I don't know. And so one of the things that was really important is to start combing through research and start looking at available articles and data. And I know I'm not alone that in this journey, I was like, I cannot read one more thing. I had people sending me stuff all over the place. I'm like, I can't keep up with these emails and all this data. But I'm so thankful for the teamwork and the exploration of looking for to see if there was something already in existence prior to me going out and reinventing a wheel that already existed. And so when I looked at my action research project, one of the things that kind of jumped out in some of the research I found was Casey Family Program. They had already created a model for success for looking at recruitment and retention of foster families. And while my action research project goes just a little bit different, in a different direction, this was a really great start. And so in the model, it looked at 3 different aspects. One was establishing a recruitment and retention committee. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but we did that. And I can't tell you how viable, how important that process was. Partner with foster parents. Again, Alfonso spoke about this. I want to hear from the families, because if I can hear from the families, I can understand what I'm doing. Am I doing the right thing by the families? Do they have different ideas that we, as workers, haven't thought about? Really important part of understanding the work that we do is by hearing from the families. And then collection of data to plan, evaluate, and to improve. So this is that same model, but it's modeled based on my organization and the work that we did. So we created a plan. Created a plan, assessed the plan, developed a plan, developed the tool, and then implemented the tool. I will refer to this as PADI because we all talk about acronyms all the time, and if you go down this PADI, it is PADI. So this was the process. So we established a plan, We looked at a recruitment and retention committee. One of the things that was so exciting about that is that it really was a team effort. So on this recruitment and retention committee was our CEO, our director of foster care, we had managers from foster care, we had direct care staff, and quality improvement. It was really important to have all those people in the same room to talk about what we were doing as an organization and where we wanted to go. But of course, that committee is missing the voice of our families. And so as we go through this, we'll talk about the fact that we interviewed families as well. So interviewed families and asked, what are we missing? What are we doing well? How can we do this differently? Do you want to be a part of this new development or this plan that we're doing? And so that was such an important aspect of the work that we were doing. Again, listening to the voice of the people who are doing the work. We created a screening tool to assess for strengths, drive, and motivation. And I will tell you, the screening tool that was created, it is not overly involved. It's actually quite simple, but we wanted to get some data that we can actually start measuring. And so I'll talk a little bit about the screening tool again in just a bit. And then we implemented the screening tool. I went into this very clearly. This was only to be a very short pilot. I am the queen of piloting in my organization. We always say, let's pilot that. Hey, the wonderful thing about piloting something is that if it doesn't work, you get to start all over and you haven't invested too much energy. And so we piloted a screening tool for a very short amount of time. It was really just for a couple of months. And again, you'll see that as we go on. I put this quote in here very deliberately because I think we do this so often. As an organization, as county partners, as state partners as well, there are things that exist already. And sometimes, as we are seeing those things that exist, we just gotta change our lens just a little bit to make it work. And I think that, I don't feel like I'm up here saying anything that no one's ever tried. I think we just looked at it just a little bit differently to ensure that we were getting some really qualitative data and information that we can move forward with. I know you've all been waiting, just holding your breath, waiting for my PICO. So my PICO was, if resource parents, also known as foster parents, are screened prior to receiving any training, utilizing a screening tool that assesses for strengths, motivation, and drive, compared to resource parents who are not screened prior to training, will there be an increase of stability noted in parent retention? Simple, simple. No, not at all. So anticipated goals were the following. There's 5 different ones. We wanted to see if there'd be an increase of sustainable homes for youth and care, foster parents who committed to providing permanency, placement options in youth care, an increased network of foster parents providing peer coaching and mentorship to all foster parents, increased retention of foster care families, and youth being offered the opportunity for adoption or guardianship through sustainable placement. This is what we were really looking for. I will tell you in advance so you don't have to hold your breath and wait. We don't know yet. We're still looking, okay? We don't know the answer to that yet. All right, so our plan, utilization of a team approach. I talked a little bit about this earlier, how important it was to utilize a team. Everyone in my organization had the opportunity to hear a little bit about the Action Research Project. They got to hear about you all. They got to hear about my monthly calls with Sherilyn and Addie. And from that, we really started to look at this as an integrated process. I use the word we a lot as I'm talking about this presentation because I don't believe I did this by myself at all. It really took a whole village. And I'm really thankful that I had the opportunity to work with so many individuals. I initially started with the foster care team because I realized that they had way more information than I had, and they were already a part of this. They were already doing the work, so why not utilize them and see what they had to say and what they had to share. So I used them to really vet the product. Is this something, the project, to see if this was something that really could make a difference. My MPLD mentor, who doesn't like fame at all, her name is Yuri, she's right here. Yuri was a great support in terms of being the director of our foster care team, and so really being able to utilize her knowledge to be connected to people who she knew and I was not aware of, to work with different people at our county, and to work with people at our state was a real introduction to the life of being in our foster care program, so I really appreciate all the support that Yuri gave. I presented this information to our executive team and our board of directors, who were really thrilled and excited, and they were also completely in agreement that, yeah, we want to know, could something like this yield some different results for us as an organization. We created a Brain Trust for Permanency committee. That's the committee I talked about a little bit earlier. And so we met every other week initially, and then kind of titrated down to what the need was to start talking about what do we need as an organization to see if we could get more resource parents into the organization, and more importantly, retain those resource parents and have them start offering that permanency a little bit more to our youth in our program. And then we interviewed past and current foster parents, and it was really important to not just interview our current foster parents, because we wanted to know if we could figure out why our past foster parents weren't foster parents anymore, especially with our organization. We thought that would give us more awareness and more knowledge on how we could do things differently. And they had some great suggestions. We assessed, and so this was the tool process. So it was completed in two-part interview process with previous and current resource parents. Initial screening tool was created. I will tell you, I created a screening tool initially, and Yuri looked at it and said no. And I said, what do you mean no? She's like, this is not a screening tool, this is a full assessment. You know? And she said, this looks so much like the SAFE tool. And I'm like, SAFE tool? I've never seen the SAFE tool before. And so I looked at that and I'm like, woo, this looks exactly the same way. And so I went back to the drawing board and I made it really simple, because again, it was just a pre-screening tool. It wasn't to know everything about the family. We obtained feedback when we condensed the tool, really received feedback from our peers, from our foster care program, and to ensure just that we were hoping that it could do something, that it could give us more information. And then, like I said, the screening assessment is really simple. It's 6 questions. It's not overly involved, but the questions really do look at the strengths, drive, and motivation of our resource parents. Seeking input. So we did all this. The first thing you see is that there's a new name on here that wasn't here before, so Sierra Forever Families. We really started looking at other organizations that maybe had a screening tool that we just weren't aware of. I will tell you that I didn't find an organization with the ones that I talked to. There wasn't a pre-screening tool or anything that was done prior to the family coming in and getting training and then doing their home assessments. Sierra Forever Families was a really great resource because I was able to touch bases with them. I will say that Sierra Forever Families is like 5 steps away from my organization, so it's easy to connect with them. And as of July 1st, we're actually merged. We're one organization, so this is even where we even are able to do more services now. We drafted a finalized proposed screening tool that we were going to use, and then shared the screening tool with our foster care director, who gave good feedback, shared the screening tool with our recruitment specialist program manager, and then shared it with our foster care team as well. Again, that team partnership is so important. And then we implemented it. And so what that looked like was basically we had an intake recruitment worker who had not worked with any of the families, really new to our organization, had no history of the families individually, and was able to start calling those families and asking these questions. So what we call kind of like a blind study. I don't know anything about you, I'm just gathering information. 20 individuals were contacted by phone, and we were able to reach all 20 of those families and talk to them each. And these were questions, we told them that basically we were doing a new questionnaire during the pre-certification process. The questions were asked as written with explanations provided as needed. And then based on the individual, the tool took approximately 10 to 20 minutes to complete. If the person had more questions, then it would take a little bit longer. And then we piloted, like I said, for 2 months, and so May 1st, 2019 through July 31st, 2019. The screening tool, I'm sorry, it's not in your packets, but this is what the screening tool really looked at: strengths, drive, and motivation. And what we were trying to do, we weren't trying to screen out families. We were just trying to gather more data. And so what we looked at was that if in the screening tool, they were all of the questions were basically you can get a score. And so what we looked at is if you got a 1 to 15, we recommended mentorship program prior to becoming a foster parent or having a kid placed in your home. 16 to 23, a recommendation for short-term or respite care, and short-term defined as 6 months or less. And then 24 to 30 was a long-term placement option for youth in care. Again, not to screen out, but to be more intentional. As we were asking questions, these were the different factors that we considered. So we were looking at emotional intelligence, transparency and ability to be vulnerable, thought process and empathy. So how did the families respond to the questions that were being asked? Some of the considerations for future were these. So the screening tool needs further testing to assess for cultural competence. After utilizing the screen on several kin and non-kin applicants, we didn't find any meaningful difference. And about half of the interviews were conducted with a scoring partner, and basically what we were trying to do is see, screening tools are subjective, and we wanted to know if there was a huge difference in the numbers or if they could be similar, and we found a 1 to 2 point difference. And it may be useful to use common themes in answering and the answers gathered. So just really looking at that and seeing how do we more understand that information? How do we better understand that information? The findings, again, I said we looked at 20 different families. We talked to 20 different families. Out of those, two families scored 1 to 15, so we would recommend a mentorship program first. 6 of them scored 16 to 23. And we would recommend short-term care, 6 months or less, or respite. And 12 of them scored in the 24 to 30 category, and we would ask for long-term placement for them. Our guide fell into 3 different categories. So what I just said, mentorship, starting there first. Category B, short-term placement, respite. So maybe starting here with a 6-month or respite alternative for families first. And then category C, long-term placement. Next steps. So commitment to organizationally, what we really want to do is keep moving forward. This is not something that is stopping for us. We did stop the project for the month of August because I wanted to be able to present the data, gather the data, and share it here. But when I go back for the month of September, we'll continue this. We might rearrange it, we might make it work a little bit differently, but we are not stopping. This is just the start for us, and we found that piloting this really made a lot of sense for us. I'm going to be respectful this time, so I'm pushing forward. I want to say thank you so much for my journey and my part of this NPLD, and they asked lessons learned. I will tell you, practice, plan, do, study, act. I'm going to tell you, when we first came on here, that's all Cheryl could talk about: plan, do, study, act. I'm like, no. It was phenomenal. Thank you so much for that. Transformational leadership. You heard her today. Addie used this term. Addie. I spoke to Addie every month at 6 a.m. And she called me at 9, and I'm like, it's 6 o'clock in California, but okay, we can do this. And so I spoke to her every month at that time. In research, I think that it's so important that there's so much great narratives that happen, but I don't think that narratives happen without data. So really being thoughtful about that. And then policy, how change is made. Really looking at that, because I do think that it informs practice and how we move forward.